Let me first start with an apology. In the video that follows, it's going to sound like I'm poking a lot of holes in Indiana Jones' character, or that I don't like him or his movies. Truthfully, I love Indiana Jones. Ever since I was a kid, I've enjoyed the spirit of adventure and heroic storytelling in all the Indiana Jones movies. But we here at Pop Fiction analyze pop culture movies and icons for greater meaning. So, let me ask you this. Is Indiana Jones stuck in the past?
Look at this. It's worthless. $10 from a vendor in the street. But I take it, I bury it in the sand for 1,000 years, it becomes priceless. Like the Ark. Men will kill for it.
Time is an interesting thing to discuss. Its meaning and impact are felt in almost everything we experience. We observe it changing the world around us every day in a constant march of progress, both good and bad. From the building of great works of science and art to the grinding of those same works to dust over years. It's rare for things to survive time's inexorable advance, unless we make them survive. Why is this important? How one engages with the past and the present shows a lot about their personality. Are they preoccupied with present problems and issues, or does their gaze shift ever backwards to a troubled history? We see this battle of wills on Indiana Jones' character through all the movies. Indy ever lives in the shadow of the past, not just his chosen profession, or even the adventures he gets up to with some of history's most famous relics. I mean his personal relationships, resentment for his father, avoiding relationships with people, including Marion Ravenwood, and being closed off like a tomb. If you spend all your time looking behind you, you're inevitably going to crash into something, right? The same thing holds true in how we view our relationships. Take, for example, Indiana Jones' relationship with his father. In The Last Crusade, we are introduced to Henry Walton Jones Sr., and we see something very interesting. Two big revelations are made into Indiana Jones' character in this movie, just from that one relationship. First, we get to see how Henry's work on the Grail has turned him into a reclusive scholar, almost uncaring, or so that's what Indy believes, and consumed by his studies of the past. Secondly, we get to see how firm Indiana was in his perspective about his father. Indiana was sure that his father never approved of his lifestyle or his adventuring. He was sure that his father viewed him as silly or worse, stupid. Indy even snaps to attention and refers to his father as Sir when they finally meet again. And lastly, when confronted on the blimp about his childhood, Henry explains things from his point of view.
Did I ever tell you to eat up, go to bed, wash your ears, do your homework? No, I respected your privacy, and I taught you self-reliance.
What you taught me was that I was less important to you than people who'd been dead for 500 years in another country. And I learned it so well that we've hardly spoken for 20 years.
What we find when we study this relationship is how much like his father Indy is, how consumed he is with the past, with the mission, with the quest. And yes, Indy and his father do have a reconciliation of sorts in the movie, but it's only after they were proven right, that the Grail was not only real, but that they succeeded in getting it, if only for a time. Indiana Jones lives a life of judgment and absolutes, always certain that what he's doing is right, that the world is black and white, good guys and bad guys. His father did too. You remember when Henry mentions that for him, the quest for the Grail isn't about archaeology. It's a fight against the forces of darkness.
The quest for the Grail is not archaeology. It's a race against evil. If it is captured by the Nazis, the armies of darkness will march all over the face of the earth.
The time we live in has a lot to do with how we view the world around us. So do the people who inform our early lives. Our formative years are when we adopt a lot of who we are for the remainder of our lives. From about the ages of 11 to 30, humans gain a significant amount of the puzzle pieces that make up their complete picture. We see this with Indiana Jones when he is young and picks up the bullwhip on the train for the first time, or is given the hat from the fedora-wearing treasure seeker in the opening of Last Crusade. His demeanor, his whole way of dress is informed by who he sees and emulates. But how he views the world is primarily informed by his father. Indy believes that what he's doing is right, no matter what. that the world arrayed before him is filled with villains and heroes, and that despite existing in an ethically gray area, he is nonetheless on the side of the angels. This self-confidence is supported by the films, but only because of the era in which they're set. In the 30s and 40s, the Nazi Party were the villains, and opposing them made you a hero. This is made all the more obvious with the introduction of the character Belloq from Raiders of the Lost Ark. In this film, Indiana Jones' foil is a treasure hunter and archaeologist working for the Nazi Party to help them find the Ark of the Covenant. Belloq himself even confronts Jones in the middle of the film and points out the similarities between the two of them.
You and I are very much alike. Archaeology is our religion, yet we have both fallen from the pure faith. Our methods have not differed as much as you pretend. I am a shadowy reflection of you.
I wonder what would happen if Indiana Jones made a mistake, or something he ended up doing had disastrous consequences. Would he be remembered as a hero, or more like Belloq? What happens if we slide the hands of the clock a few decades into the future? In the film Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, we see an elderly Indiana Jones who is struggling to adapt to life in 1969. As time continues its inexorable advance around him, we see evidence of an Indy who has retreated from the things in his life that would have made him move along with them. Divorced from Marion Ravenwood, still working as a professor at a college, unhappy with the people and sights around him. There are two major important events during this time period that present as morally and ethically gray. The first is the Vietnam War, wherein America attempted to use the Vietnamese Civil War to fight the forces of communism. The second was Operation Paperclip, which was the name given to an operation undertaken by the American government to bring over German scientists and engineers, some of them ex-Nazi, in order to help different sectors of progress in the USA. Primarily, these scientists were recruited for specialization in rocketry and aeronautics, which contributed greatly to the American space program. Herein lies perhaps the greatest evidence that Indiana Jones is stuck in the past. Time moves on, and people change. Are you the same person you were a year ago? What about 5 years ago? 10? Of course not. There might be great big portions of you that are similar. Depending on your age, you probably changed a great deal in that amount of time. Indy has not. You remember when we mentioned earlier that people form a significant portion of who they are up to about the age of 30. Indiana Jones lives through all the decades between 1938, when The Last Crusade takes place, and 1969, when The Dial of Destiny is set. In The Dial of Destiny, Indiana Jones is going to be 70 years old. While he may have had some moments in his life that caused him to grow and change, none of them seem to have stuck. It's almost like his personality and outlook on life is frozen in amber. There is another character from fiction that was frozen but managed to change quite a bit, and we all know him. Captain Steve Rogers was frozen in ice at the end of World War II, and then thawed years later by the Avengers. When he rejoined the world, according to the MCU films, 70 years had passed. The changes of the world that Steve found himself in were alien and confusing at first. Steve adapted to those times. Indiana and Steve represent a similar archetype in fiction, the man out of time. In Steve's case, it's very literal. He brings his old-timey conventional wisdom and chivalric attitude to the modern day, but he does so with an open mind. He mourns the life he can never have again, but he looks to the future with open eyes. Indiana Jones is now a man out of time, but by his own actions, closing himself off to the world and letting it pass him by, like the exhibit in a museum. And at last we come to it. Here is the stumbling block for Indiana Jones. Why is he stuck in the past? Regret. Indiana Jones is a hero and an adventurer, but to be a hero, one needs a villain to oppose. To be an adventurer, one needs a quest to overcome. Both those things describe Indiana Jones to a T. They always have, and they always will. But that's not the world we live in anymore. As time changes, we live with increasingly complex issues that have difficult and often murky solutions. There are no clear villains anymore. Unlike Steve Rogers, frozen in time, Indiana Jones lived through all the decades of his life. But he never really changed with those decades. He's still pretty much the same man he is now as he was during the war. Still though, it's important to remember Despite some moral and ethical foibles and being haunted by the ghosts of the past, Indiana Jones is and was a hero. When the world had real villains to fight, he was always there. Nazis, cultists, and warlocks ain't got nothing on Dr. Jones. So, I guess what I'm saying is, never change, Indiana Jones. You're perfect just the way you are, frozen for all time on the silver screen. Before you click away, that's our episode on Indiana Jones. I know it seemed like we were taking our aggressions out on Indiana Jones for some of the plot holes and other problems he has in his storylines, but he's a great character. So tell me which one you think is the best movie in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.